Hi, and welcome to More Human, More Resources, the HR podcast for entrepreneurs. I'm Vicki Brown, your host and CEO of Vidamaneo Enterprises. As a serial entrepreneur, I understand that having the right expert help has been critical to my success. That's why I'm dedicated to telling you, in plain language, what's going on in the world of HR that might impact your business and what you need to do about it, with real actionable tips to help you master that list of must-dos and grow your leadership muscle. First things first, the information contained in this podcast is provided for general purposes only and is not to be considered legal advice. Your decision to adopt or not adopt any practice or procedure mentioned in this podcast is solely yours, and we bear no responsibility for the outcome. We urge you to always consult legal counsel and other appropriate licensed professionals. And with that, let's get into the show. You're listening to Season 4, Episode 11. One of your favorite employees comes to you. Well, not your favorite, because, of course, you don't have any favorites, right? Well, one of your employees comes to you and says they need money. Something happened, or something's wrong, or someone is having difficulty. No matter. They need money, more money, and faster money than their regular paycheck. Can they have a loan, or can they have an advance? Now, before you make a decision, there are a few really important things to keep in mind here. Let's deal with these one thing at a time, because an advance against salary is very different from a loan. So, first off, do you want to start giving advances against future salary? Now, before you say anything, remember that if you do it for one, you have to do it for all. And on the other hand, if you don't do it, how will you feel about turning away one of your best team members in their time of need? Interestingly, requests for salary advances may ultimately dip due to the appearance of cash advance applications. Now, you've probably heard some commercials touting, get paid daily instead of every 2 weeks. Well, usually, those are some type of cash advance app. Generally, these applications will give the employee money based on a calculation of what they've earned so far in the pay cycle. And yes, there are fees and pending regulation, but these apps are available, as well as the traditional payday loans. But whichever you decide, the first thing is to put it in writing. Yep, this is really something that needs to be in your handbook, because no matter which way you decide to go, you need a solid policy to back you up. Now, if you do decide to give advances, at minimum, your policy should cover the following. Eligibility. Who can actually ask for an advance? Can part-time people? Can temps? Do you want the employee to have been with the company for a minimum amount of time? What about their standing in the company? If someone is on a performance warning, can they request a salary advance? And be careful with these type of carve-outs. You want to be explicit that you won't discriminate against anyone based on protected characteristics or their position. How many times can someone request an advance, and in what period? You don't want someone using advances to cover for their poor financial planning and, in effect, changing their pay date. So, what type of limit makes sense to you? Once a year, twice a year, etc. And don't forget language around asking for an advance when the prior advance hasn't been recouped yet. I know it sounds like common sense, but you'd be surprised what can come up when your policy isn't airtight. Now, we move on to the reasons for the request. Do you want to put parameters in place? Maybe outline that it has to be a legitimate reason due to an unexpected or unavoidable situation. Some examples include a family or personal emergency. Things that wouldn't be covered are entertainment or vacation expenses and fines. Keep in mind, a salary advance is technically a short-term loan you make to employees, so you should treat it as such. In addition to a policy, if you decide to provide advances, you should have a formal agreement, laying out the amount taken, dates, when it will be repaid, and how. Salary deductions are the usual process. And what happens if you're unable to get the money back from payroll deductions, which could happen if the employee leaves the company or doesn't have enough hours to cover, etc. Can you deduct the balance from the final check? Well, you should double check in your specific state, but in California, it's a hard no. Any type of lump sum or balloon payment for an outstanding balance, well, that's strictly prohibited. You can only deduct the amount of a single installment payment. Then, of course, you could ask the employee to write you a check to repay the outstanding balance, but if they don't, the only thing you can do is take them to court to recoup the money. No holding their check or refusing to pay out vacation or commissions or anything similar. Okay, onward to loans. And actually, now that we've discussed advances, taking out loans will be easy because so many of the same points hold true. You need a policy. It should outline if you'll provide loans, and if so, when and under what circumstances. And you need a written loan agreement. Oh, by the way, another thing to consider is whether or not you want to charge interest. If you do, be sure to check with your accountant on what, if any, tax implication that may have for the company. The loan agreement is similar to the advance agreement. It should show who, when, and how much. How will it get repaid? If it's installment deductions from the salary, be explicit on that. And again, what happens if repayment doesn't happen? Speaking of repayment, all the same guidelines hold true. You can't deduct so much from a check that it puts them below minimum wage. And again, balloon payments are a no-go in California. And keep in mind, while a salary advance is tied to payroll, a loan isn't. So theoretically, you could loan far more than the amount of 1 or 2 paychecks. But be careful here, because it will take that much longer to get repayment. Now, whether or not you decide to provide either advances or loans is purely up to you. You know your company, your team, and your culture. But generally, I try to steer clients away from providing either. There are other good alternatives. For instance, if you have a 401k plan, include a loan provision. That way, the employee can borrow money from their own 401k bank. That type of arrangement is much less complicated and has much less potential liability for everyone involved. And it's something that allows the company to help and still be protected. If you found this information helpful, please leave a review and tell a friend. Thanks for spending the time. Until next week, same time, same place.